very special guest with me today. I don't think people are ready for another Michael and Mariel collab, but you're getting it anyway. It's actually a really lovely Friday afternoon for us, but everybody will be watching this on Tuesday. So we have all the delicious Friday feelings. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I love doing anything with Michael, and he's such a powerhouse in this industry. You guys are really getting something special today. So with that, Michael is not only one of the best people that I know and my best friend forever and ever, but he is a 33-year industry veteran. He's a marathon runner. He's a world traveler. He's a very people first kind of guy. And he's also really so eloquent with the way that he expresses himself. So I really can't say enough about this man, but it was important to me that we do this very first kind of guest episode after my solo episode last week to introduce the show. It was so important to me that we got to have Michael on, just because I know how much this topic is near and dear to him, and it's something that is so suited to talk about with him. With that, Michael, welcome.
Mariel, what an introduction, and it's as always, it's an honor to be with you, and it's a pleasure, frankly, to be here. Not to just talk about workplace and the things that we usually talk about. You know, I do believe is the most important topic within that is the health and wellness of our people, the health and wellness of our leaders, and the health and wellness of our organizations and workforces that we talk so much about.
100%. And I think a lot of times when people hear me introduce this show, we talk a lot about health and wellness and the people. It really is more than that. It really is the organizations. It's the health of the buildings. It's the health of the communities and how it all works together for that ecosystem. But at the core, you are always somebody who has a particularly people-driven approach. And you're one of the few people that I've heard for years really talk about people's well-being and how much of a role that plays in their success, generally like in work and their jobs, but overall. And so, you know, when we met, you were running quite a large part of quite a large organization, JP Morgan Chase. And
Gosh.
we had connected before COVID, but I think our relationship really blossomed post-COVID when we got to film the Built World. If you guys have not watched the Built World episodes, please do. They're on the Disrupt Sierra YouTube channel. They're fantastic. And it was quite an interesting time. But I remember talking a lot about how the decisions you were having to make were on such a large scale, and how much you would emphasize the differences in cultures across the different offices in the JP Morgan portfolio. It's such an interesting topic. How does one begin to make choices for thousands of people across the world, across such a large portfolio? Yeah, I'll stop talking.
Well, I think that's a big question. I think personally that whether it's physical or mental or emotional health, I think those begin at home. I think how a person leads their life, how a person cares for themselves, how a person protects their sleep, protects how they live, surrounds themselves with people that are like-minded. I think health and wellness begins at home. And I think that when a person is whole and is living a balanced life and is physically healthy and mentally healthy and emotionally healthy, I think it's at that moment when that person is best poised to then share that with all of those around them, the people that they love, the people that they work with, the people they engage with. And I think, you know, having interacted and managed so many people in my career, in my life, you know it when you see it. You know when someone is balanced just by how they present themselves, by how they speak to you, by how they listen to you. And so I think that health and wellness is universal. It begins at home. And I think that it's similar to brushing and flossing. I think it requires exercise every day to maintain that balance.
Very well said. Very
Mm.
well said. I think when people consider such working for such a large organization, a company like that or another one, they almost have an expectation that the amenities possible to support them will be provided. And a lot of times that's true, especially, you're based, in New York. I'm from New York, like we expect a lot of these really high performing workplaces to be providing a ton of amenities and
Yeah.
even things like therapy and wellness rooms and things that you would think about when you think about a space supporting your health and wellness, a gym, things like that, fitness facility. But I think that there's a major, what do I want to say, like a major stigma around using those provided amenities. People may feel like if they take the time to have therapy, if they take the time to do a workout, if they take the time to go into the other room and just breathe because that's what the room is there for, that they in some way may compromise their job, or they're not going to be looked at as productive, or they may even be looked at as less than because they need to take advantage of those services, or they want to take advantage of those services. And I'm sure this is something that you've encountered, but I'm curious about the balance and the successes and the failures. Like, what have you seen?
I think, well, in the context of workplace and in the context of entities, services, food, beverages, mother's rooms, wellness rooms, prayer rooms, food services operations, fitness centers. I think all of that begs the question to any leader that really harnesses all of these requirements. How well do you know your workforce? How well do you know your clients? What do your clients really need to thrive at work? What do your workforce need so that they can be balanced at work? And it isn't I'm balanced at home, but I'm really imbalanced when I go to work. And that's why I don't like to go to work, because it's harder for me to balance the things in my life, my health, my point of view, whatever condition or wherever I am in my life, in terms of maybe I'm a mother, maybe I need to exercise every day because the doctor says you really need to exercise every day first of all, because it makes sense. I think you really have to know your workforce, and I think you really have to be honest with them that work should not be an opportunity cost to wellness. It shouldn't be, okay, I'm going to be in the office 3 days a week, but when I'm in the office, I can't do X, Y, and Z because they don't provide it, or because it's frowned upon, or I think it's perceived the wrong way. I think the perception, first of all, if you know your workforce and you know your leadership and you're able to tell the story of what people actually need to thrive in the workplace, it's much easier to get the resources to provide those things. That's number one. For two, when it comes to the perception of is there shame around any of these things? I mean, I happen to think personally, that is an outdated frame of reference. I think that maybe is a 19th century, 20th century frame of reference. And as a leader, I will tell you that when I see my people sitting and eating together and sharing stories and colliding, when an organization provides spaces where its workforce can collide and meet new friends and make new connections and share new ideas, that to me is like the beehive of an organization, and we as workplace leaders can provide that. I think that the externalities of the world we live in, there's so much anxiety, there's so much pressure on people, there's so much pressure on kids that are going through school that we're recruiting as interns. I think we should. I'm known for empathy, and I talk about empathy all the time because I feel that the more I talk about it, that's like exercise for me in my life. And so if we really empathize with one another, we understand someone else's journey, or we can at least lean into it. If you think, I think analogously often to great sports organizations or great sports teams in any sport, in any culture. sports teams that win championship after championship after championship become dynasties. And you look at the coaches and you look at the teams and one of the golden threads in any great team or organization that allows them to succeed over and over again. How do I keep my people healthy? How do I keep my players injury free? It's the same in the workplace. How do we keep our workforce injury free so they can bring their best to their jobs and their roles every day or virtually every day? And what does that mean? It means if they need therapy, let's figure that out. If they need a fitness center, let's figure it out. If they need prayer rooms or mother's rooms or quiet rooms, well, then let's figure it out. To build dynastic organizations, we have to keep our people injury free, or at least increase the odds that they remain healthy in all respects. And that's how I look at it. I look to the sports world, the athletic world, as an example of they know exactly what it means to keep your people healthy and why wellness matters.
Makes perfect. What are some of those ways that you found success in uncovering the needs of the employees so that you could first try to provide those resources?
Well, I think it always begins with asking the question and letting them answer it. You don't ask.
It can be as simple as
if I'm working, and this is in the C-suite. This is in the C-suite. This is in middle management. This is in any tier of the organization. When you're gathering sort of requirements or the vision for a business, it's part of the conversation. Like, what does your people need? What do you hear from your organization? What matters to them? And it might differ based on geography. It might differ because some places it could be, heat and air conditioning. It could be commutation safety. There's all sorts of things that go into the workplace experience. Ask the right questions and wait a beat while they listen and answer you to what you're asking, and be ready to hear things that maybe you don't want to hear. I really wish we had that, or I really wish you had that. And I think if a leader does that consistently in their conversations with clients and with their people, well, you learn a lot, and you take the trends from all of those different conversations. You say, you know what? God, we really need a daycare center. We really need a place where our people demographically a lot of them have just had children, and they're really stuck on a weekly basis. And how do we alleviate that to make it easy for them? Right. As an example.
Is there a theme or a pattern that you can recognize in terms of roadblocks in applying some of these, what seem like simple practices? Sometimes it comes up that, in different countries, you may have different measurements of ROI. So in the US, for example, we have, benefits, we have healthcare, we have things like that. In Canada, a lot of that stuff is paid for. We just had a guest on talking about this. So are there any kind of like thematic roadblocks that you would bring to light?
One roadblock is the perception that some amenity or some service or something that does not seem core to a business or a core business function in the workplace is superfluous or luxury or a nice to have but not a need to have.
Right.
And I think, and in some cases that's true. You can't fulfill every wish. However, as part of an organization's health and wellness, okay, so how often does an organization ask its people in a very, very focused way, what are you missing here? What do you need to do your jobs better? What do you need to elevate the workplace experience? That's number one. When people leave your organization, do you have a really candid, safe exit interview process to understand why are people leaving? Why are people leaving to go to another company? Why are they leaving a full-time role? There's a reason for it. And do you know what that is? Year by year? And so I think one of the major roadblocks is not really knowing and being in touch with your workforce, not really engaging them throughout their career with a company. And then I think it comes down to really very, very clear storytelling as to why something matters and why it matters statistically, from a data perspective, how much it would cost, and the cost of not providing it in terms of, let's take the cost of attrition over time. That could far outweigh the cost of providing a certain set of amenities that might have stemmed the tide of attrition. So it's very hard for companies to triangulate all of that data, the finance, et cetera. But for the workplace leader that all of these inputs come in, how do you simplify it to help leaders in the company make sense of it?
I don't know what this fireworks we have going on in the background is, but I love it. I don't know if you guys can see that, but if you can, I hope you're equally as excited. No, I love it. And I think, it seems so simple, but we work with so many complex organizations that are first figuring out how their business units can work best together. And sometimes I think that's really where we need to start finding a little bit more success so that the big picture can be successful, where HR is working with the real estate team, that's working with the technology team, that's working with the amenities team, and so on, the development team to program a building before it's coming online, right? So we know who we're building it for. I mean, there's so many moving parts. Trends that are in the last couple of years that you've noticed that people are looking for more and more in their workplaces? Or is it kind of the same stuff that like naturally has been there at the gyms, the food and beverage,
I think I think that what I've seen, people are looking for engagement. People, I think, generally and socially desperately want and need healthy, constructive places to engage with other people. So let's just pause for a moment. I wouldn't even just say over the past 5 years, throughout my life, but let's come back to, let's say, the past 5 years. When I go out to restaurants, when I go to the theater, when I walk the streets, when I go to Central Park, when I go to all the places where people can convene, they're packed. It can be tough to get a restaurant reservation, even though most people have kitchens where they can cook and prepare their food. So if I go to a university environment and I go to the coffee shop down the street, these students all have apartments and, they have places to go. They have libraries to go. What do they choose to do? They choose to go to the coffee shop, sit quietly with their laptop open, with their ear pods in, but they're surrounded by people. There's something about human proximity and feeling connected to something, some life force other than your own, that I think gives us comfort and I think gives us safety. Now let's pivot to the workplace. What have we learned? The workforce, fairly universally, doesn't necessarily need to go to one single workplace location. 60 hours a week, 5 days a week, or 6 days a week, far more mobile. We have the tools and technology. We've set our people free, so to speak, from that vantage point. So what does that mean? So what it means is maybe that has given companies the opportunity to not dispense of the workplace, but reduce it, refine it, distill it down. Maybe you don't need this much space. Maybe you don't only need this much space. And if you do that the right way, you keep spaces and locations that are demographically convenient for your people. And as the space reduces ever so gently and slightly, you save money. You save money by virtue of doing that. And if you take that money and you invest a portion of it back into things that really matter to people when they do come to work, then I think we're making progress. I think then, as you reduce spaces and they don't seem so cavernous or eerie or ghostly in terms of like, where are the people? There's no energy. As you reduce the space and you really enhance the services and amenities and the experience, what happens? More people want to be in those reduced spaces and they feel more energized, like the coffee shop on the college campus, or like the theater, or Lincoln Center, or like Central. So if you do this the right way, not only are you providing the experience that people actually need, not just want, but you're providing them with what they desperately want universally, collision and human engagement when they come to work, wherever that is. And so if you can put all these things together without being draconian, I think all of this takes a very thoughtful, very data-driven, very emotionally intelligent-driven process. I think the great companies have arrived at a place where they've got the right space, the right amount, the right amenities, the right services, and they've got the right culture that really welcomes their people back. Um, in a cadence that makes sense in people's lives in the 19th, 20th century sense.
It's such an important thing you're saying. You said a few things. There's one thing that over the 10 years that I've been in this industry has become more and more apparent, which is how much natural human connection and interaction has been stripped away. The opportunity for that like organic meeting of somebody, or meeting friends, or just talking to somebody at the grocery store, buying a ticket to go to the movie theater, or anything. I mean, we used to have Blockbuster. You used to have to go somewhere to rent a movie, and you'd have to talk to somebody, just the little, or you'd connect with somebody who's like looking at the same movie as you, like in the aisle. Just the littlest things. We don't have any of that anymore. We have Uber. We have, delivery for our groceries. We have Netflix at home. You don't ever need to go to the movie theater is,
Well,
a little, whatever. We have Netflix, we have Hulu, we have all these things. So you may every now and then go to the movies, but it's not like before. So all the social opportunities, even fitness, like you have these like mirror devices that will show you a workout. So in your home, you have, YouTube has a million, right? You never have to go to the gym. You never have to go to a class. There's a loneliness epidemic. And the more people are consumed into our phones and our devices to fill that void, to fill that space, that every little minute of our lives standing online to get a coffee, waiting just for the elevator to go up to our office, every little second is filled with consuming just our phone, whatever you're doing on your phone. There's this growing loneliness that's started to, creep in over time. Unfortunately, I do think that the places where people meet each other are in the office, are at work, are hopefully maybe in your building where you live, maybe at a hotel where there's some event going on, or in a retail space or a restaurant. Those are, it's wild, but it's almost like a responsibility as an industry that we have to create these activations, to create communities, to create those collisions, like you said. But I think it's a little bit more important than people realize. It's more than just like design-driven collisions so that people can meet people from other teams, or being more collaborative, or being more productive. It's like a real human need. And so what you're talking about is so important. And I don't think people really think about real estate in that kind of way. So
I think in the context of wellness and health, the reason that this has become so difficult to digest is that someone can look. You could just take an example. You could take someone who is young, healthy. It seems like they have everything going for them. They have no physical conditions, so to speak, but they suffer from anxiety, loneliness, inner demons that dwell within them. And you can't see those into a screen. And so when it comes down to, and I've said this before, the primary operating language for any human being, just simply because this is how we're conceived, born, and raised, is human contact. Human contact and human engagement. That's simply, no human being has been exempt from that process or that need. Take a kid up until, first 10 years of your life. Your primary language is touch. Your primary language are your senses. So if you then take a kid who has developed this language for the first 10 years of their lives, give them a phone, and suddenly most of their interaction becomes through a screen or whatever the case may be, well, yeah, they're going to feel lonely. You're taking something, so vital to the health and wellness of that person. And it's not to say the screens, it's not binary in that all the wonderful innovations and all the things that technology does for us. I mean, look at this. You and I are able to do this recording. This is terrific. I'm in New York and Florida.
God.
That's wonderful. But it's not a surrogate for me seeing you, getting together, giving each other a hug, sharing space, sharing oxygen. There is no replacement for that. And so I think that the balancing act is, how do we infuse all this wonderful innovation and technology, but honor the most important foundational needs in our life, which involves being with people and the magic that contact and engagement brings, not just to our lives, but to organizations.
I do think it's a huge opportunity for companies. I really think it's a
massive
opportunity. I mean, to create, it's so interesting because for so long, people talk about, especially like developers, right? People who are building the actual structure, and then they have to consider the programming. How do we build an emotional connection to this space, right? And of course, on an occupier level, no question as well, of course. But for a long time, that question has been asked, and it's kind of this gray area. Like, you don't really know. But I think that what we're talking about, the social aspect, spark the energy of what it's like to meet somebody, even if they're not going to be your best friend and you guys aren't going to see each other every day, just to meet somebody and exchange ideas or feel somebody's new energy or hear about, just what they did in their day or what they're having for lunch. It could be the smallest thing. What coffee did they order? Because you just met on, I'm standing online. There's such a magic to that, and it will become more and more rare. So, man, this is a whole new part of our industry that I think has been emerging. You have kind of new roles like chief happiness officer, chief people officer, stuff like this that's starting to come. And I don't even know if those roles have particularly been geared in this direction. I think it's just starting out, right? And those roles are probably doing a lot of things that ultimately they may not be doing, just to kind of like emerge as a new role. But I hope this is the direction we're going. I can't imagine that it's not. I think human connection, you and I have been talking about this for a long time, but human connection is one of the most valuable things I think there is in
human
life.
Connection. And, look, you and I, we could study human history, and we could study, the evolution of tribal cultures, societies, empires that rose and fell. And you'll find at the core of all of it an ethos. You'll find core values or the erosion of core values. You'll find cultures that were once strong and curated with thought and love that fell apart because of greed and avarice and all the other human frailties. It's no different today. And so I think, it would be akin to in the real estate industry. You have talented strategists, talented engineers, brokers, tractors, builders. We have so many resources and skill sets and expertise that all comes together in the things that we conceive and create and deliver. However, if we constructed a state-of-the-art opera house or a theater anywhere in the world, state-of-the-art acoustics, the very best of everything, would it matter if we didn't have the talent? If the plays and the music and the operas that were performed were not of equal caliber? The cultures that we foster in companies and organizations should be impeccable, should be as impeccably designed and curated as the very space itself. And in order to do that, it's very simple. Actions that match the words and propaganda of an organization. If you say you're equal opportunity, if you say you're diverse, if you say, we have fair compensation and performance systems, et cetera, well, they better be fair if you're saying they are. If you say that, new mothers have a home here, well, then, look at your maternity and paternity leave policies and make sure you have the things that those families need. or that you have daycare. If you say you are four things and that you are an advocate of different aspects of what your workforce needs, be prepared to do it, at least in a thoughtful way, because I think that an office or workplace that is impeccably architected and designed can feel as soulless as it feels meaningful, depending on the leadership, the ethos, the core values. If I or any other person, showed up at work and felt in my heart, I'm not really valued, I'm not really understood, they don't see or hear me fully. I mean, at that point, I could care less who designed the space and how glorious the lobby is or anything like that. It wouldn't really matter to me. What would matter to me first and foremost is when I walk through that door, am I valued? Am I seen? Am I heard from all facets of my life? And that's the table stakes for me saying, actually, this is really a beautiful workplace too. But it's sequential. The employee experience is sequential in that way.
Oh, I told you guys. I told you guys.
I mean,
I
we
mentioned
talk
he's
about
an
this stuff all day,
anthropologist.
Marianne. But that's health and wellness, because that person then turns around, they meet their friends after work, and their friends say, "Well, how's your job? What's going on in your family?" Or or your family says, "What's it like there?" I mean, it touches every part of your life, and that that health and wellness is a thread again that weaves through each part of a person's life. And we as practitioners, we have the privilege of curating like a big piece of the puzzle, not the only piece. We can impact a pretty big piece of a person's puzzle by doing what we do with heart, with soul, and with thought.
I don't even need to say anything. I'm just going to have Michael on next time. I'm just not going to say anything. Who needs to?
Funny.
It's really true, though. I mean, it's almost like you could talk about any aspect of our industry and realize the great responsibility it is to work in this space, and you can't get away from it. And it's not a bad thing. It really means that we get to create the world we want to live in. We get to create the organizations we want to work in. I was talking about recently, just, in the episode I did to introduce the show, like how even just like the smallest choice of choosing a light for the building, you might choose one light and it might appear thousands of times in that building. You might walk, home after work and feel like you have a headache, or you feel fatigue, or you just don't feel good just because of that one small choice. It could be the most beautiful workplace, beautifully designed, amenities, programmed, everything.
100%.
But the lighting is, it's making you feel bad.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, Marielle, I don't even have to think about my career I can raise an example. So my mother was epileptic, and in her life, she struggled her basically her entire adult life, and she had to take medications to control it,
wow.
and she would have grand mal seizures. So my mother, God bless her, when she did try to venture out, let's say to work, and she would say she was working in retail. Lo and behold, because of the lighting that she was surrounded by during the day. There's sometimes some people have conditions where strobe lighting can be a trigger for that condition. So that was her. So, listen, here I was, beginning of my career. She was, let's say trying to just make some money in retail. She would end up having a seizure. The ambulance would show up, take her out on a stretcher, take her to the hospital, the whole thing. I mean, in that way, you're right. Something like lighting does matter, because not just for her and our family that had to then sort of rally around that, but how about the other customers
right.
that would witness, someone working in some store or shop that so it does matter. The small things do matter.
I didn't even know that about
if we're
about
really, if we're really, I say empathetic or sympathetic around the kaleidoscope of things that can challenge people, that's our job to at least be sensitive to it and at least ask the question. And I'd say the same thing for different disabilities. I don't know what it's like to be blind. I don't know what it's like to be deaf.
Or
I don't know what it's like to
things that people have experienced that trigger a trauma, right? You never know what people are going through, and it's
Who
interesting
knows?
because we have some epilepsy that goes through my family too. And I've always been told, like, that I should be staying away from strobe lights and things like that, and unpressurized planes, and
Yeah.
can't go scuba diving because of the pressure, things like that. So I actually have a similar experience. My family. I was recently rewatching the show Mad Men, which is one of my all-time favorite shows.
Yeah.
And there's a very small, like, couple episodes, or maybe it's one episode, where somebody talks about their epilepsy and they have seizures, and it's why they can't hold down a job because they're judged and people don't
Yeah.
want to, call them back after they experience, that. And I do think that we are becoming a more accepting society, no question. But I think that there's levels to everything, and how
Yeah.
much you can make somebody feel like they belong, or that they're important, or that they're special, or even that they're unique because of those experiences. And they may even have a greater value to add, and their perspective is that much more important, especially when you talk about the built world and buildings and
That's right.
spaces and cities, because we're all so different. And if we only built cities for one kind of person, then we wouldn't have the beautiful diversity and kaleidoscope, as you so beautifully put it, that we do.
That's right.
So I think it's a really interesting and personal point. So thank you for bringing that up, because
Yeah.
it's so true, and I think people really need to talk about this more.
It matters. Mariel, it matters. And what you said in there, and lo and behold, what would happen in each one of these circumstances? My mother would be fired, maybe this isn't the right job for you, and they would move her on instead of trying to figure it out,
Right.
and adapting their environment that obviously was a trigger, in some way, or find her maybe another location or different venue or something like
Sure.
that.
Sure.
It would move her on, and it would make her really sad, and then, on we go to the next thing, right? But it does, the spaces that we build and curate and provide and service really do matter in the smallest of ways, often.
And I think sometimes the biggest of ways, like you're talking about, I mean, our experiences at work, a lot of us are there most of our day, and it has a ripple
Yeah.
effect in how we experience our family later in the day, or how we might answer the phone or not answer the phone, or, just take care of ourselves in the times outside of work, or we're so drained that we just can't even be bothered, and all we can do is just exist. I mean, it makes such a difference. And so this will not be the last conversation we have with Michael. It was really important to me that we did this one first. We have a lot of great episodes coming, but we will do probably part 2, part 3, etc. with Michael. So hopefully in person. But it's really great that we can do this and kind of kick off. Some of the passion that I have for this industry is like mirrored in Michael, or vice versa. And so I just really wanted to bring that energy to this conversation and help you guys understand where we're going with this series. And we will explore so many different pockets of what health and wellness really means in this industry, whether it's building buildings, or how the buildings themselves can be healthy, and talking about some of the particulars. And the people first approach that Michael has in everything that he does, and the way he sees the world, is just so beautiful, and he's such a good communicator. So, I mean, I can rave all day, but I really, really appreciate how just authentic you always are when you show up, and how honest you're willing to be and transparent. And I know that whoever does listen/watch this episode will feel really, really inspired and energized. So I just can't thank you enough for joining me, and, ending your Friday with me today. I know everyone will watch on Tuesday or listen on Tuesday, but
Mariel,
thank you so
it's
much.
first of all, it's a pleasure. Second of all, it's a privilege to be here. And there are so many things that are discussed and debated in this world, and many things get over debated, overexposed. I don't think we're ever done talking about these aspects of how we make things better for each other. I think I think it's so vital that this conversation never ends. Just like, look, I'm a work in progress, and I'll be a work in progress until the day I die. That's the way I look at it. And so if I keep thinking and trying to improve and engaging and talking, well, then people will teach me things. That's the other thing, is that, when you engage in a conversation, I learned so much stuff from people, because you're open to it. And so I think I applaud you for doing this. And I think that this conversation and all the things around health and wellness are not only timeless, but I think are vital for us to build into the framework of how we lead and how we work with each other in this industry and in this world.
Michael, so I almost forgot to ask you, but arguably most importantly, what's something you do to take care of your own health?
It's a good question. It's so I think a couple of things that I didn't do as a kid, but became a mainstay in my adult life. One thing that a lot of people know me for running marathons, long distance running. I'm always running something or somewhere. And I find that I'm not the fastest runner. I'm not going to win the race or anything like that. But I'm consistent. And I find that the running, training for a marathon, Mariel, I've run thousands and thousands of miles, thinking, reflecting, breathing. And a lot of that has been sort of a soundtrack of my career. And that, if I, facing challenges at work or, trying to think about a strategy or some circumstance, something like that, running has been a big part of my health and wellness, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. So, and I think that's part of staying in motion, keeping my body in motion, staying flexible. I think being flexible in body translates to your soul and your mind, being flexible in thought. So my entire life around running and marathon running is a big part of my health and wellness. I think the other thing is just, healthy eating. I drink a lot of water, hydrate, especially because of the running. So by virtue of what I eat, what I consume, I think often when you're in a, let's just speak for myself, when you're in a company and you're working and running as hard and as long as we often do, long days, lots of travel, airports, time zone changes and all stuff like that, having good habits in terms of what you're eating and drinking really matter. And I think all of that, exercise, staying in motion, eating healthy, etc. And I also think, so there's all of that. And I personally, everyone has their thing. Some people go to yoga and some people go to bar classes or whatever they do. Pilates, which is terrific. All of that. Is the other thing is I find that I like regular exposure to the arts, live music, a philharmonic, an orchestra, opera, ballet, musical, some arts performance, or even a museum or gallery. I find that is also part of health and wellness because it gets my mind off the work and it puts my head somewhere else for a while. And so I think all of that is really important. And now, and with technology, so to speak, I limit screen time. I limit
Huge.
How much time I'm going to watch, Netflix or television, whatever.
Yeah.
So I choose my moments carefully, and I choose my feeds very carefully. In that, I'm very, very wary of what's coming in. That without my decision, involuntary information, feeds, news. It's often bad enough just in the mainstream. But I'm very careful about curating the inputs to my life is basically the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And making sure that toxic inputs or toxicity that I can sense on the horizon, I keep at bay as much as I can, unless I have to deal with it for some reason. So it's all of that stuff. It's sort of, it's multifaceted, just like a thoughtful multi-generation workplace strategy. It just applies to my life, not the company.
I love it. That's all really good stuff. Really good, hopefully, little tips and inspiration for people who are struggling to figure out balance it all and what they can do.
Yeah. Each person's how a person approaches their health and wellness, it's like the person itself. It's a work of art. There's no magic bullet. There's no it's just know yourself. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know your needs, and know what you need to be healthy and well.